everyone. Welcome back to season 2 of the Firewood Addicts podcast series on my channel. I got another good guest with us today. Excited to restart this podcast. I hope that you all enjoy it as well. I have a few ideas of people that I want on it, but we'll see how this goes. So anyway, for this Sunday's podcast, we have our new friend John. John, say hi.
How you doing?
Rock and roll. We're good. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes. John, what is your background? What do you do, and where are you from right now?
All right, I'm coming from Indiana. That's where I live, and my background is actually in law enforcement. I'm a retired police officer, but as of right now, I'm a school teacher. I teach at a career center, and I teach criminal justice there, and the way I got into wood was that we had purchased property in unincorporated. And so it had a house and it had a furnace, and the furnace was natural gas, LP. And so we wanted to supplement with wood. And so what we did was we originally first bought a 55-gallon drum and converted it into a wood burner and was using that to supplement the heat. But we were only here like on the weekend, so it wasn't really that bad. And then we ended up moving to the country where we're at now, and we mainly heat with wood, but we still have the LP backup for the furnace.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm curious, in your neck of the woods, is natural gas or LP? Is it as equal to if you buy a cord in your area in terms of like having to heat your whole home when you're not burning, or is it cheaper than wood, or about the same, or more or less? I'm curious.
Well, a cord of what is it? It's roughly a cord of wood here goes for around $400. So $200 for a base cord, $400 for a full cord, and so when you're looking at a fill up of 250 gallons of LP, you're looking at I think it's like $1.40 now for a gallon. So it ends up, you end up running through more LP than you do the actual firewood. But then you got to take into consideration, what are you doing to get that firewood? You know, I've got a what's it called, a dirty hand splitter, which is it's a 27-ton splitter. I picked that up at Tractor Supply, and so you're running gasoline through that, and then you're running your chainsaw, so you're running gas through that, and then you've got to basically haul the wood out of the forest. So we got a little John Deere tractor that we hook up a trailer to that we pull it out with. Then you got to stack it, and so it's a large time consuming process. So if you look at the amount of time that you put into it as opposed to just buying the liquid propane, it may not equal out, but you're in the woods, you know what I mean? So you're in the woods and you're in nature, and life is good, so doing that.
It's sad that you have to kind of weigh the ROI on things like that. Time is money. Time is spent in the woods, and it's hard work, having to fell and then buck and split. Versus, you know what? I don't have time for this. I'll pay the fee. LP people come in, give me all the gas I need. I heat my home. But then again, it's that physical workout. It's being in the woods, like you said. It's the mental and physical therapy, having to buck and split. That, and you just can't beat the wood heat. Wood heat. It's unlike any other type of heat. You can't beat it. The heat will saturate into the walls, in your furniture. It's so comforting. When it was really cold outside, you were cozy inside. And that LP heat, whatever other type of heat, it's unlike wood heat, right?
You are absolutely correct. And we learned that actually the first winter that we actually stayed in our house, where we had the 55-gallon drum. And I mean, the 55-gallon drum was nice because I could shove chunks of wood in there that were just ginormous. you know. But the problem with that drum was that it wasn't very efficient. So it would burn that wood. It would command a tremendous amount of heat, and then even if you try to regulate it, it was the way that you bolted that stuff on. There were still air gaps, so it was still getting more air than it was supposed to. But yeah, the first winter we went through 12 cords of wood heating the house.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was just like, man, we're gonna have to do something because to get it more efficient. And so we then tried putting the flapper on there so that it slowed it down. And then some people had the option where they put the second 55-gallon drum on top. So I was looking into that. And then my brother-in-law, he had a wood heater that was cast iron. I think it was a Fisher's. And he says, I bought a new one, so if you want it, he goes, I'll sell you mine. And so I said, yeah, I'll take that. And so moving that thing was a bear, man. It was those things.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So
they're heavy.
Yeah. So we brought that in, and we went down from 12 cords to 8. So we knocked off 4 cords of wood for the wintertime. So I'm thinking, well, that's really great. And that one heated really, really well. And then we decided to try an even more fuel efficient one. And so we went and we spent the money on the more fuel efficient one, and that's what we're using now. And we went through 5 cords this winter.
Not bad.
Yeah, so it just basically it just keeps it keeps knocking it down. But this one is it's a what do they call it? It's a reburner. It's got the tubes in the top that have the holes in it, and so it then reburns that, and then yeah, that is seriously efficient. It really is. And so when you look at the price, you're looking at like what I think there was $1,500, but we got it on sale. And so you're looking at that price and you're thinking, man, that's a lot of money. But if you're using that to save money where you don't have to buy the gas, it's way worth it. You save money. It's just like if you're going to buy a chainsaw, just buy a good chainsaw, because you're going to be using that thing on a daily basis. You're going to be using that to basically heat your home. So are you going to spend $800, $1,000 on a saw? And you're like, man, I really don't want to do that. But yeah, you have to do that. You do, because the Craftsmans and the pull-ins can work, but they're not going to take the abuse that on a daily basis that you're going to need. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I agree. So you saved several cords with your newest stove.
Correct.
So times whatever, like 3 or 4 cords times what, $400.
Yeah.
Add that over several seasons, and your stove's paid off. You paid off your stove.
Yes.
Type thing. I mean, granted, it sounds like you cut and split all of your wood, but if you did not, if you had to buy every single cord, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
Do the math simple, and over so many years, not very long, that you paid off your stove while being warm.
You paid off your stove and your saw.
And your saw. There you go.
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on that note, John, what are you running right now, saw-wise?
I'm running I actually still have my first Craftsman saw. It was
there
a 14. I have that saw. I rarely use it. I haven't used it in probably like 6 years, but I still have it. And then from there I went to a pull-in. I was using that for a long time, and the pull-in worked really, really well. I really don't have a lot of bad to say about the pull-in. I still have that saw too. And then we went and bought a steel MS 271 Farm Boss, and that was my main saw. And I used that thing for literally 6 years straight, and I'm still using it to this day. And then I got tired because you're getting older, and there's sometimes when you gotta cut stuff that you're not supposed to, like above your head, which you're never supposed to do.
True.
And so I decided to get a little MS 170. And so that little MS 170 I actually use a lot, because you're just supposed to use it for trimming, but you'd be surprised how actually efficient that little saw is, and it's so easy to throw around. It's actually really nice. And then I had a 40-inch oak fall on my property, because we own 9 acres, and I took the Fire Boss out there, and it was bogging. as I was cutting through the oak. And so I told the wife, I said, the saw is probably worn out. I probably need to, do piston rings and cylinder. I said, we just buy something else. And she goes, well, what do you want? So I was looking at Husqvarna, I was looking at Steel, and then I was looking at Echo, and I start doing research and doing comparisons. And it turns out that the 620 is actually a really good saw. It's considered a professional saw. So we bought one of those, and it handled the oak without a problem. Without a problem. And so I only got a 20-inch bar on it because the longer the bar you get, the more drag it causes on the chain, and then it causes more work on the engine. So I figured I'd just get a 20, because you can put a 27-inch bar on it. But I said, well, I just get a 20-inch bar. So I used a 20-inch bar, and I had to basically cut one side and then cut the other side. But it ripped through that oak like it was nothing. Seriously, it was just that's an awesome saw. But I still mainly use the 271. That's the main one I use, the Farm Boss.
So, was there a difference of CCs in those saws then, in terms of newest to the second oldest?
Yes, the Echo is a 60 cc, the Farm Boss is a 50 cc, and then I don't know what the little 170 is. I don't know what size cc that is, but I think it's like maybe a 40 cc, so it's not It's not very big at all. But there's definitely a cc difference, and then you can definitely feel it when it starts gripping into the wood. It pulls you into the wood.
Yeah. If the raker's down, then definitely. You bring up a point. I think my first saw was also a Craftsman, and I think my second saw was also a Poulin. I still have those saws. I don't run them like you said. I think a lot of us we tend to hoard saws. Like, we don't want to get rid of them, but yet we want to buy more. We always want to buy another saw, or we're on Marketplace on our phones. Oh, you saw? I'll have that one too. Like, you never have enough saws, but then when do you run them, and when do you use them, and when do you part with them, or a trade? I don't know. I think a lot of us who are in this have too many saws. It's kind of like firewood. Like, you can never have too many saws, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, and it's because you have different saws for different tasks. You know what I'm saying? Because like that oak, my saws weren't handled that, so I needed a bigger saw. Now, am I going to use that big saw on a 6-inch tree? No. You know what I mean? Because now you're just wasting time and fuel, because it's not as it's going to burn more fuel because it's pumping more cc's. You know what I mean? Because an engine's just an air pump. It sucks in air and basically blows it out. And so the bigger the engine, the more it's going to suck in, the more it's going to blow out. So you just gotta. There's trade-offs there. So but I probably should sell the Poulin and the Craftsman, but it's just one of those things that, how much are you going to get for them? You're talking about a 15-year old saw. It's probably something $10-20 maybe. So in that aspect, it's better just to have it in case your saw gets pinched and you got to cut it out. You know what I mean?
That's true. It's true. I mean, I have bartered with firewood and a chainsaw before. You could do that, and yes, there's a saw for most in terms of what you're cutting. Like you said, like, you're not gonna want to have like a big Farm Boss on a limb. So there's a saw for each job, and to have a saw in terms of cc's and bar length for what you're doing, or have multiple of the same ish saw, bar length and cc. So when one saw is dull, one saw is out of gas, you just put it to the side and start up the next one and keep cutting whatever you're doing, type thing. But
go ahead. That was actually something I was going to bring up. Like, I have basically a kit that I take out to me whenever I go to saw. So like, I don't drag the logs to my splitter. Like, there's a lot of people that do. I don't do that. I take all my gear to the splitter. So you got to take your premix. You got to take your chainsaw oil. You got to take your saw, of course. Then you got to take all your safety gear, your helmet, your chaps, your gloves, and your steel toe boots. And then there's I also take a kit. You probably won't be able to see it, but I take a kit. And the kit has it's got like you need a first aid kit, but you need what they call a combat action tourniquet, a CAT. You need one of these
Okay.
in case you get cut, because it can happen, and you're
Yep.
gonna have to stop the bleeding. You get a like a femoral artery bleed. You got 3 minutes, and then it's over. And then like I also have one of these, which is you pound this into the log, and
Log vice. Yeah.
it holds a saw blade so that you can sharpen it. And then, of course, you bring extra spark plugs with you, just in case.
Smart.
Holds extra spark
Smart.
plugs. And then, of course, you bring an extra chain, just in case. Keep a chain. And then the other thing that I bring is this. Some people just take a saw. I mean, a file. But I like this because it cuts the time in half, because it not only sharpens the chain itself, but it also grinds down the rakers. And the beauty about this thing is that the angle's built in already. So you just put it on there, line it up, and then just drag it one way. And there's even arrows on it to tell you which way to drag it. So there's never any mistake. So out in the field, that makes life so much easier, and it's so much faster that you can just basically, if you accidentally stick your blade in the dirt, your chain on the dirt, you got to sharpen it. You then use that thing, you pound it into a stump, and then you put the blade on. You tighten the blade down, and then you just sharpen it up. The other thing I was going to mention too, to keep your blade out of the dirt, what I did with that oak, because it was so big and heavy. You see these guys, you start bucking, and then you're wondering, okay, well, how do I get that last 2 inches off of the thing? And so, like, a lot of guys, they'll take their axe and a wedge and they'll ram it in there, and then they'll crank it. Well, there's a chance you could break your axe doing that. And then you got other guys that actually use a front end loader to basically turn the log. Well, that's nice if you have a front end loader, but I didn't. And so what I did was, because I got a peavey, but it was so big, the peavey couldn't move it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, I got to figure out a way to do this. So what I did was I went to the end and I got a farm jack. I don't know if you guys got farm jacks, but farm jacks are extremely important when you're logging. And so I dug out a little bit, put the farm jack underneath there, jacked up the end, and then I take 2x4s and I shove them underneath it, and then I can just basically cut through, and then my blade doesn't hit the dirt. And so I just basically do that, use the farm jack, pump it up, shove the 2x4 underneath there, saw what I need, then move it. It's time consuming, but I don't have a front end loader. So, you do what you got to do.
Yeah. A lot of us don't. I mean, to have all the gear and with the chainsaw and splitter, and that's one thing. But a lot of us don't have an excavator or a mini loader or a tractor, so you have to kind of make do with what you have. I am familiar with the farm jack. I didn't actually know what it was called, but that's a handy tool to have and to use what you have to make sure that you're not gonna hurt your body in terms of having to move things around. So that's very smart, John. I like it.
The other thing,
and your kit.
Yeah, before I had a farm jack, I don't know if you're old enough, but cars used to have bumper jacks. And so you can sometimes you can find them at flea markets and yard sales, and they usually want about 10 or 15 bucks for them. And it's an old school jack, and it works just like a farm jack, but it was made for a car. And so I originally used those. Originally used one of those. So, but
they're
now
very similar, but different application. I gotcha.
Yeah. I modified the car jack by using like a motorcycle tie down onto it, so it would basically hook around the wood, and so that way it wouldn't slip off. But yeah, that was my original jack to get it up in the air. And the other thing that I use too, and I know that they don't tell you to do this, but I'll use a milk crate to sit down on as I'm cutting the wood, because bending over, cutting it, that it tears up your back. And so I basically just put a milk crate down. I sit on the milk crate, bucket, and then just grab the milk crate, slide over, bucket, slide the milk crate over, bucket, and then that's basically what I do.
I think whatever. I mean, a lot of people would say to have a bigger saw, bigger bar, so you can to be able to stand up and buck. But a bigger bar, bigger saw means more weight to hold that thing and to go down. And a lot of us, I mean, have the body issues. But I think sit down or being on a knee, I think it happens. It's common. But as long as you can, if something happens, you're able to quickly get away, then I think that would be okay.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest bucking something that was on a hill or at an angle. But if it's flat on the ground, you should be good. Should be good.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree.
Yeah.
So sounds like you have definitely when you go out in the field with your kit and all your tools, that's a lot to remember, a lot to carry. Are you able to have like ATV or a truck or a Jeep to go to carry everything?
I use just a regular. It's basically a lawn tractor. It's a John Deere lawn tractor that you use for cutting the grass. But I got it. My neighbor had it and he didn't want it anymore because it wasn't running right. And he said, all I want is the deck off of it. He goes, and you can have it. So he took the deck off, and I basically got the tractor. And the only thing is that it needed a carburetor clean. So I cleaned the carburetor, and it's ran fine. And then I got one of those little utility trailers, and that's basically what I put all the stuff in. And then I take it out to wherever we're going to do that. I unload it, and then we use that to basically load it with wood to bring it back to the house to stack it. So that's mainly what I use. Oh yeah, and the other thing I use is a picaroon, but I only use that when we're splitting, because that saves your back tremendously too.
I have a picaroon and I started to use it, but with the wood that I currently have, it's gonna be in big chunks where I have a massive round and I've noodled or split it down to chunks. And even with the picaroon, I can't. It's too heavy. So the picaroon is ideal for sure, but I mean, you're not gonna want to pick it a massive chunk when you need like a full body lift to get that onto your splitter.
Yes. Yeah. See, that's the other thing too that I never understand. People, my splitter, you can use it vertical or horizontal, and I know most people use them horizontally. And to me, why am I going to take that energy of squatting down, picking up that round and shoving it on there, and then have to take the pieces off when I can just put it vertically, roll it over there, split it that way, and then I'm not actually lifting it. So I don't know why people don't use the vertical instead of the horizontal.
I think a lot of people forget that it can go back and forth. I call it the transformer splitter, where you can literally go like this in a matter of seconds, right?
Yeah.
And I, for a long time, would only split vertical. And then I'm like, well, watching YouTube, like a lot of people are standing up and they're splitting. So like I can do that too. But I don't know. And then I think recently I tried with the big chunks or big rounds, having split them with the splitter vertically to cut them into chunks. And then after I did so many rounds in the chunks, then I would go horizontal, where I can still lift them, they're manageable. And then but I got so good then and now where I could pinpoint where the blade is in terms of the wood and get my perfect split each time. It's almost easier to get the perfect split when it's vertical, to where you're not having to handle the wood as much, having to hold it up or at a certain angle so it was split where you wanted to split. So I'm not sure which is more time effective. I think it has to do with maybe the wood and the round, if it's going to be straight grain, where it's going to be all knotty type thing, or just maybe if you want to be standing up or kind of bent over when you're on like milk carton type thing. I think it's all the preference of the person in their wood yard and and maybe, or that day you want to stand up, or maybe the next day you want to sit down for a bit. So I have no clue which would be better. I think it's all the preference of who's doing it, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like if it's kind of like it comes down to like a physical skill. So like I teach you how to play basketball, but I only teach you how to dunk. But if you can't dunk, you're going to lose every single game you play. But if I teach you how to do a layup and a free throw, now you can use those instead of just dunking to actually win the game. So everybody's different. Everybody has their own preferences. And so I always tell people, try a whole bunch of different things to see what works for you and then use that.
I agree. And then I don't like to preach this, but I think a lot of people on YouTube or on Facebook groups, they get so bent out of shape. Someone will mention something and like, that's not how you cut firewood. That's not how you stack. You should do it this way. You should do it that way. Well, how you do it in your wood yard does not impact me at all. There's no cause and effect at all. So it's fine if you do something different than how I do it. Good on you. My opinion should not matter, and people get so worked up about that. And which is why I like having these chats, is to share what people are doing so someone else can hear and say, oh, that's interesting. Let me try that, or adding something to my own kit when I go to the field. Yeah, exactly. Interesting stuff, John. I like it.
The other thing I too take is a weed whacker. A weed whacker. Because you got to clear the area, especially when you're felling trees. You got to clear the area all around it. And so, like sometimes, like the top of the tree will fall off. So now you got to get basically the bottom part. And so you want to make sure that everything's clear. So you got an escape route in case it goes bad. So, but yeah, that's the other thing is a weed whacker. So yeah, the little trailer's basically filled up, and then I just empty everything out of it. And then towards the end of the day, and then we pick everything up and come back. And then I always leave at least 2 hours before sundown, because I always clean my saws and I adjust my saws, and then I also oil them. So clean the air filters, clean the bar, and so and then I fill up the bar oil and the fuel, so that next time when I grab that case, I know that saw is ready to go.
I think that's a good practice, to give yourself enough time, buffer time, to do that to your saw. It will give you a sense of pride in the machine that's keeping your home warm, or to provide food to the table if you sell wood. And to make and the next time you want to use it, like you said, it's ready to go. You don't have to fiddle. Like you only have a window of time, but you have to file down the chain, or to oil it up. Where next time you want to use it, all you gotta do is just fire it up and you're running, right? Exactly.
Yeah, good to go.
I like it. I'm guilty of not doing that. When I'm done for the day, I put it on the table and I shut the door and I walk away. I need to get better at that. I do need to get better at that for sure.
Well, sometimes you're so tore up after working all day in the field, it's just like, I'm done. I'll worry about it tomorrow.
Yeah. Or I think it's good to know yourself and your body enough to work X amount of hours and then stop. So you're not too fatigued mentally, physically, where you can take care of your saw, whether that's 10 minutes long or a half an hour, enough to get that all cleaned up, all sharpened up, all lubed up. So, and you're not going to make a mistake or to cut yourself when you're filing or whatever else. I think that's good to get the job done, but not be too exhausted to do that, because when you're tired, mistakes do happen. Either you're in the field or in the garage, shop or whatever. Yeah. I want to go back to your saws real quick. Sounds like you're not brand loyal. You have basically several brands of saws. Is that by happenstance, or you're not one to want to be brand loyal, or
it came down to financial. Came down to financial, because in order to get a 60C steel, you're looking at close to over right around $1,000 to a little bit over, whereas the Echo was less than $600, and so I could literally almost buy 2 Echoes for the price of a steel. Now, granted, I like steel, I really do, I like them, but is it worth double the price? And I couldn't justify that. And then I looked at the Husqvarna, and my cousin has a Husqvarna, so I actually used his saw, and his saw actually worked okay. I liked it. There weren't any problems with it, but it was just like, you know, I was kind of partial to steel at that time, but now I'm not brand partial. Whatever's going to give me the best deal and do the job, that's what I'm going with.
I think that's a good philosophy. Um, with products or like chainsaws, and in, in my opinion, to be brand loyal is almost kind of silly. People are so adamant about the brand they've used forever or the brand they switched to, and that's what they use. And it's a chainsaw, folks. I mean, a lot of us are not pro fellers or arborists
Right.
or what have you, and just in my opinion, the best saw is a saw that is running in your hands.
Oh
You
yeah.
know,
Like
whatever's working, use it.
correct.
It may not be. It could be a small bar. It could be on the brink of dying. It could be a brand new saw with a nice blade, but it's running and working for you. You know, it's
Absolutely. It's just like what they see. Like a lot of people ask, "What's the best gun? Which gun is the best? You know which one it is? The
mm-hmm,
one that saves your life. That's the best one."
for sure, for sure. That's
So it's
funny.
just like, and the other thing is like bars. You know, some people only use steel bars on their steel, and I'm just
Mm-hmm,
like, you know, I've tried a forestry bar. It's a good bar.
mm-hmm.
I even tried what's the name of that from Tractor? Was it no? It's from Rural King. I think it's called Trail Link.
Mm.
I think it's what it's called. It's a good
Okay.
bar. You know, I haven't had any problems with either of those bars. And so, you know, where people are like, oh no, you got to put that on that because that's what it was meant for. Man, as long as it works, that's what matters. That's what you're
I
looking
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Was works and is functional and within your price range type
for.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to get into lighter bars, but as right now they're just so damn expensive. And
Yes.
uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm curious. So obviously you heat with 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 wood in your home. Are you selling firewood at all? I'm curious.
Uh, Not yet, because because I'm getting older and going out there and cutting 12 cords of wood every single year. That's it's a lot of work. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work. It's a lot of work to fell, you know, and then buck and then split and then stack. And so it's a lot of work. So I'm trying to basically build up a reserve so that I don't have to work as hard every single year. And then if I get that surplus, then I'll probably look into possibly selling wood. But as of right now, yeah, I'm not. I'm trying to build up a reserve. Trying to build up a large reserve is what I'm trying to do.
Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. Um, what is the most common species of trees slash firewood in your area?
It's uh it's a mix between oak, maple, and I can't remember the name of the ones that has the little helicopters seeds that drop down. I can't remember which one that is.
Is
So
it
that's what
alder?
I don't know. That's what's popular.
Yeah,
And then of
there's
course
two.
pine, but I don't burn pine because it's
Gotcha.
too oily and it causes too much creosote.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So and I watched one of your things and you said that you had to have your chimney swept. You don't do that yourself?
No, I do it. Yeah, yeah. I have an
Okay.
episode. I think like the 1 year ago. I think this month or last month. But yeah, I have done it before. And I don't think I'll film doing it again this year or maybe like aftermath. But I mean, my chimney it should be fine. But I want to make sure that there's
Yeah.
no question to
Right.
make. I mean, each year at least once. I mean, I think some people do it like twice a year, like in the early or like later stages of of burning season. But I think it's a good peace of mind where you know that your chimney is clear, so there's no chimney fire, there's no issue there, and to keep off on it so it doesn't build up on you if you get some really sticky spots.
Correct.
But Yeah, a lot of people like don't think about it, and it scares me. You need to make sure that either you buy the tools to do it yourself, or you hire it out and just pay the money, get it done. So there's no question. One thing to feed your stove with wood for months on end, but you make sure that chimney is clear, so you continually to make sure that everything is burning correctly. And yeah, gotta sweep it out and clean it up.
Yeah, yeah. I had a problem last year where because I sweep out my chimney at least usually try to do it before season, and then usually like right towards the end, and then I'll do it again. So like I try to do minimum once a year, usually twice a year. And I go from the top. I don't know how you do yours. You go from the top.
Same. Yeah, to the top.
I was
Yep.
going
Same.
to the top, and as I was pulling the rod out, it disconnected from the
Oh.
fitting, and I'm
Oh.
just like, how am I getting that out of there? It's just like, oh my god.
Shoot.
So
Shoot.
I actually I took several motorcycle tie downs and basically shimmed them down there until I was able to hook it at an angle, so it lifted it up like that, and I was able to pull it up so I could grab it. But since
Wow.
then, I always put a tie down because on the end of your brush there's a hook. And so I always hook a tie down onto there. So in case that happens again, it won't. I can pull it out through the bottom.
That's smart. That's smart.
Yeah.
I've used the past few years. I bought a kit where it's like a section of pipe or like rods that will click into each other, and then you click one end to the brush that will spin, and the other end to like a power drill, and you
Oh.
just keep on going down. You drill up and down, and then you add more rods up and down,
No.
drill, and until you hit the bottom, and then I just go back again in reverse.
Yeah.
Not reverse, it's spinning, but to go back up to the chimney, and then I'm good. I have the last few years somehow it would disconnect and the whole thing will fall down.
Oh my gosh.
But how I'm able, but these rods are flexible because they're meant to do elbows too. So
Oh.
and I have access with my stove. The chimney will go up from the stove, turn and turn again. No, it goes up and then over to the chimney, and I can take that off. So I was able to fish it out from right above my stove when it fell each time. And I had to take that section out to clean anyway. But I just got a pain because I wanted to keep that section on the stove while I'm doing my cleaning to keep all the soot and smoke in the stack and in the stove.
Sure.
Whereas if it was open, I had to have a bag on it with tape, So it does happen, but if it's not accessible, what do? You had this rod stuck in the chimney forever? I mean, you're not gonna have a gnome go down there and find it for you. It's just, I mean, you have to make sure you know what you're doing. That type thing, yeah.
Oh yeah. The other thing I meant to mention too is that, and I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there's a phenomenon with two strokes. It's called cold seize. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
And what that means is that if you take a two stroke and you crank it right open, as soon as you start it, there's a chance the engine can seize. It's called cold seizing. And so it's really important that before you start sawing, you warm your saw up for at least a minute. So that means you start it up and you let it idle for at least a minute. And then, blip it, make sure it's cleaned out, so that it's flowing good. And then you start sawing. You don't want to just start it up and then just bam, and then wide open right off the bat. Don't do that. That's not good for your saw.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. And I think people watching do that when they start it up and then they're gonna start bucking. But save some time and money. Let it idle, like you said. Let it idle. Let it chill out for a minute or two, especially when it's cold outside, and let it get everything all warmed up, and then have at it. But take that few minutes, like you said. Let it just hang out idle, chill on the ground. I found that my pink wave, my purple monster, when I let it idle, especially when it's on cement, that thing will run away. It will just bounce away the whole thing. Good Lord! In fact, the bottom uh, cheese for the dogs. We'll like make like this little etching in the
Really?
cement slab. Oh yeah, they're that far down or whatever. But yeah, that thing will just run away from you when you have it idle there.
But yeah,
That's
the other
funny.
thing, when it comes to oil, um,
Mhm.
some people will just go to the store and buy any oil that they can find.
Mhm.
I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend either buying what the manufacturer recommends or go to a motorcycle shop and buy the best synthetic oil that you can possibly find. So you're talking like Bel-Ray, Yamalu R, Klotz. I run Klotz in mine, and I run it at 32 or 35 to 1 is normally what I
Okay.
do. And then the gas that I use, where I'm at, there's an airport, but it's like a local airport, so I can go there and buy 100 LL, which is 100 low lead gasoline. And so then I mix that with race fuel because I ride dirt bikes. And so all my dirt
Mhm.
bikes are two strokes. And
Mhm.
I have a lot of knowledge about two strokes because I used to race professional motocross back in the 80s.
Cool. Cool.
So the what I found is that Klotz is actually a really good oil, and it's not going to give you the best performance, but your engines are going to last a lot longer with the Klotz. And then the Bel-Ray, you get good longevity, but you mainly get more power out of their lubricants. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. And Yamalu Bar, that's a good all around race oil. And you figure a chainsaw, whether you want to admit it or not, you're running that thing almost wide open most of the time. And so you better have really good oil in that thing because otherwise it's going to turn into a doorstop real fast.
Mhm. The anchor for sure. I
Yes.
it's crazy to acknowledge or to understand that you literally have a motorcycle engine in
Yes.
your hands, close to your leg, close to your face, and that thing, and the full throttle, the open throttle, that's a lot of RPMs right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. You're talking 10 to
And
12,000 RPMs.
oh yeah,
That's
just going full blast.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. You'll see a lot of guys, they'll modify their saw, and the main thing that they're doing to modify it is that they are basically removing the baffles inside of their exhaust, or they're putting on a new muffler that's already been routed out. And what you have to understand, a two-stroke is not like a four-stroke engine. A two-stroke has to have back pressure. If it doesn't have back pressure, it's not going to run as efficiently as it would if it did have
Mhm.
it. Now, a four-stroke, you can run those with no muffler, okay, and they'll basically run fine. But a two-stroke, you'll actually lose power without back pressure. So the guys that are modifying their stuff from the, I call it the YTI, which is YouTube Institute, listening to those
Yeah.
guys where they're cutting their exhausted, don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to lose power.
Would you recommend not modifying your saw at all?
I wouldn't say that. Okay, because you got to remember that they come from the factory so that Joe average woodcutter can operate them, and so that they don't run into warranty issues right off the bat. So your
Mhm.
saw is probably going to be running rich, which means that all the parts are definitely going to get lubricated, but then you're going to get a buildup of oil basically over everything. Okay,
Mhm.
so can you modify your saw? Yes, you can. You can modify the carb. You could put on an aftermarket carb. You can take it in and get it ported, and then that'll definitely increase power. You can get the head milled so that you cause more compression. So yeah, can you modify a saw? Yes, most definitely. But to those guys that think that they're going to get instant horsepower out of modifying the exhaust, it's not going to happen. It's just not. So like if you're modifying your carb or you're modifying the actual engine itself, yes, you will definitely see gains. But um, is the price worth the gain? Because I mean,
Mhm.
you're talking 60 cc's, okay? So you're talking it's pumping out maybe 5 horse. You might get one more horse out of it or half a horse more. So is that $500 that you spent on that? Is that worth that half horse, or would it have been cheaper and more efficient just to buy a 70 cc saw? Do you know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I hear you. I
you
hear you.
know, it's like those race saws. You know, those guys that use saws for competition. I mean,
Mhm.
for them, yeah, they need that. For a guy that's bucking a tree that's you know, a 20-inch maple, I don't think you need that.
Yeah. I think that's not like a new trend, but I think maybe like on YouTube, people getting their saws ported or putting on an aftermarket muffler, I think is a thing to do that's popular. But I think for me, a part of it, not all of it, part of it is at least when it's ported, it's just so much louder, and it just sounds cooler to
Okay.
have this saw that's loud to begin with, and now it's even louder to where your neighbors further on can hear you getting stuff done, and they know when you're cutting, like 2 miles away plus or whatever it is. Yeah, I own two ported saws,
Okay.
both done by the same guy who was on this channel. Also into motorcycles. Also, I think he uses this Tony. Also uses motorcycle oil in his saws as
Yeah.
well. He's big also into using premium oil in his saws to make sure
Yeah.
that they last, right? Yeah. But do I need a saw that's ported? No, but I have access to them, so why not? And
Sure.
then I'll just make sure that I'm careful with how I use it and take care of it because, yeah, it's just one of those things where to each their own in terms of like
Absolutely.
how I use or to modify my saws does not impact you at all. It's just something
Absolutely
different,
not. I'm just trying to
Exactly.
make the point that the money that you're going to spend, is it worth it for what you're
Exactly.
doing? Is it worth it for what
I
you're doing?
mean, I think what did he quote me? It was like $400. It was some high number of his time to do the work
Well, yeah, because
of
it's
having
very
to port a
interesting work.
saw. It's not
It
cheap.
is. No, there's a lot of physical labor that's involved in doing that, and they
Hmm.
actually have to know exactly how to get the flow. So I mean, there's actually a science to it. There really is, and so like I said, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's just I don't know. It's just are you getting the most bang for the buck out of that? And it's just like I can't justify it for myself, but hey, if people want to do it, go ahead, man. You are going to get more power. You're definitely going to get more power out of that saw. You are.
Yeah, yeah. On the note of what you're putting in your saws, are you? You mentioned, I think, to go back to, did you mention fuel as well? What
Yeah,
fuel do you use?
yeah.
And you're using what type of fuel?
Because you figure, all right, the way it works is that if the compression ratio on something is over 10-1, which I think most steels and echoes, they're at 11-1. When you're talking about that much compression, pump gas is barely enough. So you need to supplement that either with a octane booster or with race fuel or airplane fuel if you have access to it. Like I said, like my race bikes are running 12.8-1. So I have to run over 110 octane in them, or otherwise they'll basically detonate and explode. They'll blow a hole in the piston. So I just use that fuel for my saws because I just mix up the oil for my motorcycles and then I just put it in my saws and my weed whacker and stuff like that, and it works fine. And then the airplane fuel and the race fuel don't contain alcohol, and alcohol has this wonderful property where it eats rubber. And so you start running into problems because most chainsaw carburetors have rubber diaphragms in them because they're like little pumps. And what they'll do is they'll actually turn that rock hard. And then your saw won't run. You start leaking fuel everywhere. And it's because the alcohol in the fuel. So if you can get fuel that doesn't have alcohol in it, or you get a good race fuel, because you can take race fuel and cut it with premium fuel and you'll be fine, gas pump. But yeah, if you're running regular premium fuel, I'd recommend putting an octane booster in there. Because you should be running close to like 95 or 98 octane for like 10-1. You really should.
If one doesn't have access to that or doesn't want to touch upon additives or having to mix it or whatever, at the gas pump, if you have an option of the 2 or 3 or even E-free gas, what would be your recommendation?
Oh, if you can get alcohol-free gas, I would say that's definitely the way to go. But you're still going to run into a octane problem. So I'd say uh, just buy the premium fuel and run that, and then just be aware that your rubber parts on your saw are going to go bad. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, yeah. I've
Unfortunately.
I've run ethanol-free fuel in my small gas engine equipment for several years now, but to get that is like one town over from me,
Okay.
and it's not too far, but it's kind of like a chore to go there and back. Whereas I can go to my local Costco gas pump
Sure.
and get premium fuel.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to put regular fuel in my saws or my gas tanks. That I know, but I think the price per gallon of a premium compared to ethanol free is about the same. It's
Yes.
just a wash. And
Yeah.
I run enough, in my opinion at least, I run enough saws and equipment to justify. I mean, they're not going to sit in my garage for very long. So if I'm using it, it won't collect the water. So if I don't want to go next town over, I'll just buy premium, mix it up, and call it good. But that's just me for
Yeah.
what I run. And so far, so good. I mean, knock on wood, right?
Yeah. One thing about wood stoves, a lot of people don't take into consideration when you're heating with wood. Sometimes you have to move that wood inside the stove, and a lot of people will just use like a poker or something like that, or depending on the way that your stove is, sometimes the wood will fall against the glass or the door. So when you go to open it, it'll basically fall out. And so what I always do is I keep a set of welding gloves next to the stove, and so that way I put on the welding gloves, and that way if I got to move pieces of wood, I don't burn myself, and so that way you can move that stuff safely. And then I also
Yeah,
use I don't know what it's called, but I also use this creosote buster. I get it at Menards. I don't know what it's called, and I put that in there, and that helps out tremendously because I had a problem where because we were going through so much wood the first 2 years, I was actually burning wood that was wet, and so
oh,
I would put dry wood in there, and then I would put like 2 wet pieces of wood, and I would burn it. Well, then what happened is that basically it was building up inside the chimney, and so I had to actually sweep the chimney in the middle of winter one time
ooh,
because it was building up so bad. And then I found this stuff. It was called the creosote. I can't remember, creosote buster or something like that. And then we started adding that in, and even with the wet wood, it wasn't a problem. So the stuff works. I don't know what they put in it. It's probably severely hazardous to your health, but it works really good.
is it like a log that you buy that you would
No,
burn? Is or
powder.
or
It's
powder?
powder. Yeah, it's a powder. Creosote destroyer.
Oh, cool. I see it.
Yeah, that's it. It's a powder, and you basically take like a tablespoon and throw it in there, and then you start the fire. Yeah, it works really good.
Right on.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
How? So you said just now that you had to burn some wet wood.
Yes.
How do you determine that your wood is dry enough to burn?
It turns gray.
Turns gray.
Turns gray. Yeah.
That,
I mean, it's just like, yeah, you can definitely see the difference. So like when we first cut stuff and we're putting, because I use what are they, IBC containers, the cages. I use the IBC because we used to stack wood with cribbing. That's the way we used to stack. We put railroad ties, and then we also went through I don't know what they're called. They're for when they're 4x4s, and you put them on cinder blocks, so we get the wood off the ground. So we were originally using railroad ties, and then we were stacking it and cribbing the edges. And then what was happening is that you get animals, raccoons and chipmunks and stuff like that, and then they're over there messing around on the wood piles, and they would actually get them to fall over. And so
oh,
you're in the middle of winter time, and now you're trying to basically dig out wood out of frozen snow and ice. So I decided I watched I can't remember, it was on YouTube. It says never stack wood again, and I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And then he was using those IBC containers. So then I went online to Facebook Marketplace to look for IBC containers, and there's a guy selling them literally one town over for $25 a pop. And so you can either
score.
you can either take the bladders or he'll keep them. And so we bought them, and then I'm basically using that. And I saw that where guys are just basically throwing the wood in there. But what I found is that if you just throw wood in there and you don't basically stack it, it doesn't dry as fast. So we stack our wood inside the IBC cage. And then the other thing I do is I put, because I originally used tarps. I always tell don't use tarps. Tarps hold moisture because most people don't have the tarps above their wood. They lay it on top of the wood, and then that basically keeps the moisture in there. And so I use corrugated fiberglass. I picked up, I think they're 12-foot sheets. Picked up 12-foot sheets of corrugated. I guess people use them for like siding or like a roof. And so I just put those on, and I zip tied them onto the actual the cage so that they don't blow away. And that's been working really, really well.
Right on. That's smart. Yeah. So how many cages do you currently have in your yard then? Do you know how many you have?
Oh my gosh. I think I got like 26.
Nice.
I think. Yeah, I think it's like 26. Yeah. Because
you live in an area. Sorry, go ahead.
Because it's each cage holds approximately half a cord, roughly. It's not exact. It's actually a little bit less than a half a cord. So I always try to have at least 12 cords. So we got over 24 cages.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think there's it. I look at the draw of if you have some industry in your area next to you that gets these cages or these bladders of whatever liquid, and then they don't need them anymore. They get emptied, and then how to offload them. A lot of places they give away for free or super cheap, or in my area, I for whatever reason I don't have that. So I can find a cage for as little as $50, upwards of like $150.
Oh my God.
$175. Yeah, and I can't justify that. So when I do find them for cheap or free, or the bladder inside's all nasty, I'll just go ahead and take it. I'll deal with the bladder later, but those cages are gold.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
They're very handy. They're very handy to use, and definitely a trend in the firewood industry right now is to use them, and then either to use them to store wood, or to deliver wood, to dump wood in your trailer or your truck type thing. So yeah, they're handy. So when you're stacking, did you cut out the front of it too, or is it all still okay? I gotcha. Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, because you got to be able to reach all the way into the back, and if you don't cut it out, it's much too difficult. So yeah, I cut out literally. I don't know. I think it's 1, 2, almost 3 bars down. I cut out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it stays in there. It doesn't fall out. So
exactly. Back to how you can determine when your wood is dry enough and it being gray. Would you agree that when a piece of firewood has changed color from whatever brown color to the hue of gray, isn't that gorgeous? Just that grayness. Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah. Yes. And then I think you mentioned about clanking the pieces of wood together. They sound different. They really do sound different. Yeah. So yeah.
And that sounds awesome too. I mean, the clanking, the bowling pin type noise, like, oh baby, I love that sound. I love it. Okay, so let's back up a second, John. Okay. You mentioned that you're running 32 to 1, and I would say the more common ratio for a saw, either what people run or from the manufacturer, would be 40 or 50 to 1.
Yep.
I'm curious why 32, or is it obvious that you want to make sure that you are protecting your saw as much as possible?
There was an article done by a guy. His name is Super Hunky. He has passed away since then. And what he did was he was involved in an experiment where they looked at oil ratios for 2-stroke motorcycles. And what they found is that the leaner mixtures cause the lower rod bearings to not get sufficient amount of oil. And so what they found out is that when they went to a ratio of 32 to 35 to 1, they were able to get that lubrication that was needed. And so Like I'll be honest with you, on my race bikes, my entire career, I ran 50 to 1, and I never had a lower end bearing problem ever. And then after I read that article, I then increased it to the higher oil ratios. And what you have to realize that when you do that, you are going to have to actually tinker with the carburetor so that it runs efficiently, because you're going to run a little bit rich otherwise. But um, the saws are made to run from the manufacturer at 50 to 1. I just run more oil in them just to be on the safe side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
I
yeah,
gotcha.
they're set up to run at 50 to 1, but I run mine a little bit rich.
Totally fine. I gotcha. I gotcha. When I bought my Pinkway saw, the purple one, the purple monster. What was that? Early this year? I forget when. And I was dumbfounded. It said in the manual and literally on the saw, they want you to run 25 to 1. And so on the episode when I unboxed it, that's what I did. And I ran one gallon uh, fuel tank jug of that 25 to 1 until it was empty. And I mean she smoked. She definitely smoked a lot.
Yeah.
But and then in the episode, a lot of people commented, oh, that's because of where it was manufactured and their quality of oil and all that stuff. And I think I've since ran both 40 and 50 to 1. She runs, but I think to be aware, if you're mixing your own fuel, a lot of us don't mix. They just buy the pre-mix from the store. It is what it
Oh
is.
my gosh,
But if you're
that's
gonna mix your own, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I tend to mix my own because I want to know what's in my saw, right?
right. Absolutely.
Um, but if it's good to know what's in your saw, and if you don't mix your own fuel with oil and you just buy whatever's on the shelf, fine, what it is. But I want to, like I said, I want to know what's in my saw, um, and I think to be just to be, I mean, it's good to know your saw, what's in it, how it works, and how to maintain it. But it's to understand if you're mixing your own fuel with oil, how to do it properly, and then maybe just add a little bit more oil to it. It's better be safe than sorry, I would say, to make sure that motorcycle engine in your hand is lube enough going full blast.
Right.
And a lot of us maybe aren't cognizant of that. I just pour it in and I run it. I don't think too much about it, but I think to be a tad more aware that if you don't do that and take care of it, then you're going to seize it, or it's going to be a headache for you, or it's not going to start next time that you want to use it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's just it's I would like to buy those, that because actually that fuel that you buy that's pre-mixed, that's actually really good fuel in there. That fuel doesn't contain ethanol. It's premium fuel that is in those containers. But it's just like, it's one of those things. It's just like, man, I can't justify spending that money. I just, you know what I mean. So it's just like, I'll mix my own oil and my own gas. But yeah, I would like to be able to just buy that stuff by the case. I really would.
Yeah, the whole barrel of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think.
55-gallon drum.
Whew, yeah, I think it was in my last podcast. I was talking to an arborist, and I mentioned that I bypassed uh, to worker crews of my local city, and they were weed eating like a bank or whatever. And I noticed in the back of their truck they had several 1 gallon jugs of the VP premixed fuel. And then I
Nice.
went to the local
Nice.
hardware store, and they're like $40 a gallon of that stuff. And I'm like, my taxpayer money is being spent on this fuel. Like, what the holy heck here? But then I got to think about it. The people running the equipment may not be small gas engine techs mechanics, and then spend the time to pre-mix and shake it up and make sure that it's correct oil ratio. They just need to pour it in their machines and go.
Yep.
So I think it's just justified that way. But a lot of us, like $40 a gallon is just not not
It's not.
in the
It's not
cards for
feasible.
a lot of us, you know.
No, it's not economical. It's just
Hmm.
not. I wish it was, but it's not.
Right? I mean, I'm, I'm sure there's some people out there that do firewood as a hobby, and they had the means to buy whatever saw, whatever splitter, and fuel, and maybe for them that's not an issue, not a factor at all. But I think for many of us watching this, buying fuel at that price point is just not possible, and that's okay. And that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny. That's funny. Um, maybe I can ask you this, going back to filing your your saws to
Hmm.
make sure that you're sharp enough to cut. You're hand filing, I assume, right? You're hand filing with
Yeah.
the steel tool, okay? Um, is there a brand of files that you have found are better than others?
No, I actually bought. I actually own several sets of files, and they all work relatively exactly the same. There are some people that say that you're only supposed to use a file one time and then throw it out.
Oh
And
wow.
I'm just like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And so the what I found is that the I like the steel tool the best. And I mean, you can actually replace the files on there, so you could actually stick just about any file in there that you wanted. Do you know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
but I haven't really found one file that works better than another file. They all work relatively the same. I think the most important thing is that you only go one direction with them because I've been told, and there's a what's the name of that guy? He's got a channel where he tests a whole bunch of products. He tests like engine oil. He tested files. He tests lawnmower engines, and he did one where he tested files, and he used a microscope and saw that when you pull the file the opposite way, it actually damages the teeth on the file itself. And so um, I only use my files basically one way. But I haven't found any difference between files. But it just might be what was available in my area. That's all I had access to. But I don't know if there's any files that are far superior to other ones. I don't know.
Yeah, I asked around a few of my viewers via text. I think a few weeks ago, and I got some more ideas because I on my 272, my clone saw with my 28-inch bar. I don't know if it's a different metal or not, but I because I'm shorter and it's a longer bar, and I'm still not used to a long bar, and I keep hitting dirt because it's so long. So when I go to sharpen it, I just bought the local hardware store Oregon files, and I don't know whether it was the chain metal or the file, but those files just got dull in a heartbeat. And I literally spent the other day like 30 minutes filing all those teeth. And because either the file was so dull or the metal on the teeth were so strong, I don't know what it was, but I need to change something up soon because I can't spend that much time filing. It was just it was painful. It
Well,
was
yeah,
it, it was painful.
yeah, and that's another reason why I only went with a 20-inch bar because you're talking way more teeth. You're talking a lot more teeth, and then you got to do them. You got to do every single tooth, and it's time consuming. And then you got to make sure that you keep that file exactly straight. You got to make sure you keep it exactly level, because
Hmm.
you start altering the angle either way, and yeah, and now your saw isn't going to be as sharp as it needs to be. And then you start
Yeah.
cutting at an angle where you put your saw straight and it starts sawing at an angle. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
god, what's going on?
It's funny that people when they're bucking and they go at an angle and they're like, well, like what's going on here? Like, why is it happening? Like it must be the bar. The bar's at an angle, or it's crooked, or it's bent. Well, most of the time it's going to be your teeth. One
Yep,
direction is not as sharp as the other side,
yep,
and that's why you're cutting like this. You have to make sure that you know what you're doing enough.
yeah.
Um, yeah, funny, funny. I like it. When you're in your wood yard, John, when you have your ICP totes, are they out in the open field, or is it on a fence with the trees, or is it getting constant sun, or where are they at?
Yeah, they're in the we have 9 acres, but we live on an acre, And so 8 acres is woods. And so we have them at the back of our acre, but they're still so that they get sunlight basically almost all day. And so I don't have them next to the wood line. I'm probably going to have to start stacking some over there, but then I'm going to actually have to clear back that wood line because sunlight is extremely important. I don't think people realize how important sunlight is getting to that wood. Airflow is important, but sunlight is almost more important than the airflow. And so they are basically out in the open. They're out in the open.
Right on, right on. And then let's go back to when you're out on your property harvesting wood. Are you cutting down trees just for firewood? Or are you seeking out the ones that are maybe like dead or they have fallen down in the storm? Or what kind of wood are you cutting over there then?
Yeah, I try not to cut down good trees if I don't have to. So I always basically go around the property looking for fallen trees. And I got a motocross track on my property, so I just ride the track and look for trees that are down, and we just go over there and get them. And then so like this summer, we had 9 trees fall down on my property. They were totally good trees, but they just fell. And I've gotten to 2 of them. I still got 7 more to go. So I mean, it's just like I got a lot of wood I still got to process. But yeah, I try not to take good trees. I try not to do that. I just try to take basically trees that have fallen because I don't know. I don't think they say that trees can communicate to each other. I don't know if you heard that or not. They say that they can communicate. If you cut down trees, they actually send a message through the root system to basically thicken their bark so that they become tougher. I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard that.
Interesting. Yeah. I think there's research about that. It's very interesting to read about that. Yeah, I think I'm with you in terms of if you don't need to cut down a tree, leave it. I mean, yes, trees are renewable. Trees are a renewable resource, but if you cut down a tree today and plant one tomorrow, the time it takes for that small sapling to grow into what you just cut down is not going to be in your lifetime. I mean, it's going to be like a bigger tree. So yes, a tree could be leaning towards your house, or you're fearful that it's going to fall down on a fence or a shed. Okay, cut it down. That's fine. But a tree in the woods that's alive and not doing anything or harm anyone or you or whatever, leave it be. Focus on the ones that are already dead or already fallen down. Or yeah, I agree with you. I was going to do an episode on that, but I didn't want to come off too preachy.
Preach to it, man.
You know, yeah. I do that, and when I get wood delivered or I go out and seek it out, it's already been cut down for whatever reason. So I feel good about that. It's cut up and dead now, and now I can use it. Whatever purpose it was cut down on their end, that's on them. That's on them. So now I take it in and I process it and then burn it or sell it. So yeah, I wish I don't own the property behind me, and I've cut down a few there, but I don't want to, like I said, you don't need to cut down trees that aren't harming anything. Just to focus on the ones that are already down.
Yeah, if I don't have to take a live tree, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it.
Have you perfected the art of felling a tree in terms of having to cut a notch and then the wedge and all that yet?
Yeah, I've been like I said, I try not to take live trees, but sometimes what happens is a tree will fall, and then it'll actually be held up by a live tree. So you got to take the live tree, which is actually really extremely dangerous because now you got another tree laying on top of it. So yeah, I usually use the I don't know what it's called. I do an undercut first at an angle, and then I cut to make the wedge. Then I take the wedge out. Then I cut in, and then I'll knock a wedge in there, and then keep cutting, and then basically just start knocking wedges in there to get it to fall. I see the guys who are doing plunge cuts and stuff like that. I try not to do plunge cuts. I did do them on that oak because I was trying to get my saw to be able to cut basically both ways because it was having struggling. But yeah, I just use basically get that notch in there, and then back cut it, and then hammering some wedges to start getting it to go.
What gets the heart racing more, when you're bucking full blast, or when you're about ready to have that tree come down and you're looking at it, looking at your saw, looking at the tree, looking at your saw, and it gives and you need to run away? What's more scarier?
Oh, it's definitely the bucking. That doesn't bother me at all, but the felling of the tree does. And what I do is I don't look at the tree. I look at the cut, and I look to see the gap getting bigger. As soon as I see that gap getting bigger, boom, out comes the saw and away I go. Yeah.
I gotcha. I've only felled one tree, and it's on the channel, and I didn't know it. I mean, I knew it was dead, but I didn't know it was hollow, and I didn't realize how dangerous that was.
Yeah, they'll explode on you.
Yeah, it worked out, but it was one of those things where, like, a steep learning curve. I didn't do my undercut properly, but it worked out at the end. But one of those things where if you don't know what you're doing, but you still want to get it done, it's almost best to call a professional, pay the money, and have them do it, so you're not hurting yourself, your property. I mean, it all depends. Like you're cutting in the woods, so there's nothing around you, right? But if you're near a house or a fence line or other people, it's not worth saving a few $100s to have someone else cut it down for you, and then you can buck.
Well, I think a lot of people underestimate the weight of wood while it's in its compacted actual trunk form. I don't think they realize how much that weighs. And so, like, if that thing kicks back, it barber chairs, or it comes off to the side, that thing will kill you. I don't think that people think, it's just wood.
You see clips on social media, YouTube, of people with their saw, they're cutting it down a tree, and something happens, and the tree will kick up them, and they fly in the air, and it's no joke. It's no joke.
No, it's not.
And just because you watched YouTube for a year on Firewood, and you think you know what you're doing, and you go out there with a saw, I mean, it's different. Different from watching it and learning. I mean, yes, you're all learning, but to do it in your own wood yard, that's a totally different thing. Totally different thing.
Good old white
yeah, and I agree with you. Like, people don't understand the weight, volume, and the force that a tree can have. And if that's moving, you alone are not going to stop that. Even like an excavator tractor may not be able to stop that as well. That's a lot of all of it there.
Yeah.
And wherever it wants to go, it's going to go. Period.
Yeah. Yeah, I seen one where these guys tied a rope to it, and then they tied a rope to a front end loader because they wanted the tree to fall a certain way. Hey, it didn't. That top of that log went, and it just pulled the entire tractor and everything. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Wow. That's nuts. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Interesting. This is a good conversation, John. I appreciate it.
Do you break in your saws when you buy them? So in other words, you buy a brand new saw and you break it in. Are you familiar with that at all?
I'm familiar with the concept, and I should have the patience to do so. I think it comes down, but I think it comes down to not fully understanding what to do. But it sounds like you do.
Okay.
So how does one break in a saw?
There's two ways to break in a saw. It's just like a two-stroke motorcycle engine. So the first way is that you never run it at full throttle for more than 3 seconds. So you're mainly in half throttle, basically all the time. And you want to do that for approximately the first 20 to 30 minutes of the saw's life. Okay? That's one way. The second way is where you do what's called idle break-in. And that's where you start the saw up and you let it idle. So you let it idle first for 5 minutes so it reaches operating temperature. Then you shut it off. And you wait till it gets cold enough that you can touch it. Once you can touch it, You then start it up again. This time you let it run for 10 minutes. Then you shut it off. And you do the exact same thing again. The third time you run it for 20 minutes, and then it's usually broke in. So you run it for that first 5 minutes. You blip the throttle a couple times as it's idling, and then shut it off. Same thing. And then the saw's broke in. You can run wide open after that. Now, Echo is different. The way Echo is done, they say that their saws don't need to be broken in because they don't use square piston rings. Their piston rings are convex, and they chrome line their bores, so you can they say right out of the box you can run them wide open. So, but I still broke mine in because that's just habit, because I don't want to cause a premature wear or seize because it wasn't broke in yet. Because you got to remember, man, the first time you're running that thing wide open, all that metal is getting hot and it's expanding, and so the gaps in the piston rings, all that stuff now is coming into play because as that stuff expands, if they didn't put the gaps in big enough, you'll bind, and then you got a seizure. So yeah, a lot of guys don't break in their saws, but it's one of those things I've always done. Always break in stuff.
Is that still a thing even with newer saws, or that's like old school back in the day type of practice?
They say it's not. They say it's not needed anymore, but I still do it because it's just habit. You know what I mean? So I don't want to have a boat anchor. So you know what I mean? You got a lot of money.
It's not like you're. Yes. And it's not like you're going to be doing it every time, and you're not going to buy a new saw every week. So when you do buy a new saw, spend the time to break it in, which doesn't take very long, right? And then you're good to go. Then you're done, right?
It takes roughly, if you do the idle break-in, it takes about an hour and a half to do it.
Okay.
But you're not cutting with the saw anyway, so you just start it up and basically put it on the ground and let it idle.
Mm-hmm.
Go over there and blip it a few times, let it idle, and then shut it off, let it cool down, spark it back up, blip it a few times, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like right when I bought my saw, first thing I did was took it out of the box, put everything together on it, make sure all the parts were there, make sure everything looked like it was going to operate correctly, put oil and bar oil in it, and broke it in day one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. Mm-hmm. Had no intentions of sawing with it, just wanted to make sure it was broke in.
Yeah, to give yourself enough time to break it in, and then the next day run it type thing. Not box, fuel up, cut. I gotcha.
Yeah.
On the note of maintaining your saw, when you are adjusting the carb, are you using just your ears, or do you have a tack that you use?
No, I just use my ears, and it's from years of working with motorcycles. You can, you know what I mean? Tuning a carb is an art. It's an art form.
Yeah.
And there's actually a lot of YouTube videos on it, and I would suggest that if you're going to tackle that, watch as many of those as you possibly can, and then go from there. Or basically go to you can actually go to a motorcycle shop, and I'm sure that they would be more than happy to tune your saw. Whether because like I don't know what kind of dealerships you guys have around here, but the Still dealerships and the Husqvarna dealerships, they're basically run out of hardware stores, and I don't know if those guys are actually certified Still or Husqvarna mechanics. Do you know what I mean? Because those guys would be trained in how to do that, and so I would say you would be better off taking that saw to an actual motorcycle shop where, there's Husqvarna motorcycle shops because Husqvarna makes motorcycles. So I would say you'd probably be best taking it to one of those.
True. And I think there's people out there who watch the channel or whatever, and they don't understand what a carb is or what it does or that it can be tuned or should be tuned. A lot of us have the ear to tune it. I do not. Oh. And so sadly I don't have the ear for it. And I have a tack and have used it, but I think many of us out there too, they understand that carb needs to be tuned, but they don't quite understand that even a finite, like 1/16th turn or 1/8 turn can do a lot of difference. Yes. Either to the left or to the right type thing. Yes. That you don't need to go like half a turn or a full turn. That's not no. Just little turns, run
Yeah.
it or tack whatever, and then because it's like you said, it's an art. It's an art
Yeah.
to tune a carb, and then it's not like a one and done thing. Based on seasons, based on whatever else, you need to make sure that it's to make sure it is tuned. To turn it to and from, maybe each time that you're running it too. It's not just a one and done thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you want your saw to be the most efficient, I mean, barometric pressure comes into play, temperature comes into play, moisture comes into play. But for most people, running a saw the way it was stock is going to be good enough for them. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be the most efficient? No. Is it going to be the most powerful? No. But you know what? It's going to get the job done, and that's what basically everybody's shooting for.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's for most people, I would say don't mess with it. Just leave it the way it is.
Leave it. Yeah, don't because you create more of a headache for yourself. If you mess with it too much, then you're screwed. Then it won't work at all,
Right.
or run
there's
worse than it was before.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm definitely not an expert in chainsawing. I'm not an expert in the maintenance. Not an expert in filing. But you learn as you go,
Yes.
and you watch the YouTube videos to learn, and to what I have found is to have people who are experts in different things and be able to connect with them on filing or on having the carb tuning or what type of bar to use on this saw, all that stuff, and to not hire out, but to make sure that you have access to people who know more than you.
I always use this, and that is everybody knows something that you don't know, and it's your job to get it out of them.
There you go. I like that philosophy.
Yeah,
I like it.
That's the way to
That's
go.
funny. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
It's been a ride on the channel, and it's cool what I've learned, and the knowledge sharing part of it with folks. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Now you've touched upon a few other things like lessons learned and tips and tricks and all that stuff. Is there anything else that you want to share with us? Perhaps that's maybe lacking on YouTube, or maybe your opinion on things that are like a misconstrued except a concept about firewood or chainsaws or the like, John?
I think one of the other things that is kind of irrelevant. What you have to realize, and we didn't realize this until later, that especially in the wintertime, insects burrow into wood. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so when you bring that wood into your house, they're coming out because they think it's summertime. And so you're going to start getting critters in your house, and you're going to be like, where did these things come from? And so, they're coming from your wood. So, you got to keep that in mind. The other thing is that when you heat with wood, your house is always going to be dirty because as you're moving the wood from the whatever you carried on, I bring it in on a dolly, and then I use that, basically stack up the dolly. And then, but as you're bringing it in and moving it, wood's basically getting everywhere. And if you have animals, they're going to be dragging that wood everywhere. And then they're even going to be chewing on the wood, which means that they're going to be grabbing pieces. And so it's just like, the women have to realize that the house is always going to be partially dirty whenever you're heating with wood. And then the other thing is, I think I mentioned that when you're putting on your safety gear, make sure you check it for insects, because like spiders will basically go in your earphones, or they're go in your helmet. So when you put that stuff, you want to look first before you actually put that stuff on, because I've had that happen to me a couple times. So I look all the time.
I agree with you. Yeah, for sure. On my channel, like when I'm trying to get gear up to either buck or to use the slitter, like you see me and I'll blow into my headphones, and that's because to make sure there's no bugs in there. Because you don't want bugs going in your ear. I mean, and they have nowhere else to go besides like in. Yeah, I mean, you have to check or look or blow, and I agree with you. Yeah, you don't want that'd be bad.
spiders. You wouldn't want one of those biting you in the ear. You know what I mean?
No,
So yeah, you gotta check your gear.
nasty.
Most definitely.
And yeah, it's one thing to have flies in your home during the summertime, but when you're burning and you see a bee or a wasp or whatever flying around, like, oh, that makes sense because they're hibernating and they're in the bark or in the wood and now they're alive because you, like you said, that they get summertime because it's warm out. So now you're in your home in your basement or your house and you're trying to get to get this bee out of your house or kill it or whatever. Like, get out of here. I don't want you be in my house. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sorry that you woke up, but now you're going to die because you're in my firewood. So it's like your fault. It's your fault. Um,
Yep.
that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's a level of dirtiness for sure. And I think, at least for me, when I, when I, when I burn, I crack a few windows downstairs and upstairs to create some airflow. That and so there's some fresh air too coming in. Yes, it's going to be balls cold outside, but I
Sure.
think a level of fresh air too is healthy. Um, and more so than having like your air filters going too. I think to make sure that there's fresh air coming in, I think is healthy.
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. Do
Do
you
you
have a
crack windows too when you're burning?
yeah?
Okay,
Do you have a cold air intake on your stove?
that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I
Okay. Yeah, a
got.
lot of guys what they'll do is there's all most wood stoves have a cold air intake, and what that's for is so that it can basically take fresh air from the outside and basically use that to basically feed the fire. And so um, it actually gets an airflow. Whereas if you use the air in the house, for some reason, you would think that the warm air would be better for the stove, but they say that it's not. I have a cold air intake, but I don't use it because I was going to have to drill a hole either in my wall or the floor so I can get that cold air intake. And I just like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I don't think I do, but I know I think a lot of like modern stoves have a built-in fan in the back that you plug in and then the fan goes.
Okay.
But that fan is not to force air into the stove for airflow. What that
No.
fan is to push air from the heated stove into your house.
Yeah.
And,
We used
and,
to use a box fan for that.
yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that's what the fan is for. But yeah, but with my fan of my stove, I have what is it called? Where you can like slow down the speed.
Okay.
It, you plug it into a thing, and that plugs into the wall. And I forget the name now. I should know this, but anyway, there's a dial that will increase or decrease the power that you're getting from the wall, so your fan's not spinning that fast. So it's at
Okay.
like a lower speed because I don't want it to be that fast. That is so it's so loud. I don't want the loud
No.
fan, going all the time. But yeah, airflow I think is important, and I think people with like a longer like a rambler type one story house to have like a ceiling fan to kind of move around the air because sometimes the air the warm air at the stove it needs to travel to each room so the whole house gets warm. Whereas if it's only going to be warm in your stove, it's not going to reach the far corners, perhaps. But
Correct. Actually, what
unless
we
it's a
found
living
out.
house.
Actually, what
Go
we
ahead.
found out is that if you put a fan in basically the farthest part of your house, so that's basically going to be the coldest part, and you
Mm-hmm.
blow that air towards the heat as opposed to taking the heat and trying to blow it there, for some reason, it works way more efficient. I don't know why.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah, I
air
don't
would
know.
usually would face the blowing part towards the cold part, so you're
Yeah,
sucking in
yeah,
warm.
yeah.
But you're saying opposite.
Try reversing it this year and see if it makes a difference.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good tip. I guess I mean in theory I don't know like it does make sense. Like if you're sucking in warm air, have it be to warm air draw to the fan, wouldn't it almost cool down when it hits the fan? So when you're blowing out, it's not as hot as I don't know. There's a science behind it. It's beyond me.
Yeah, it has to do with
Fans are good.
thermodynamics, with heat going to cold. I don't know. I don't know why, because I read about it and I'm just like, that's not true. And I tried it and it's just like, oh my god, it actually worked. Holy, I was just like, I freaked out. It did work.
That's funny. That's
Yeah.
funny. So do you? So you mentioned gas before. Do you still have your gas stove too, or
Yeah,
gas
yeah,
heat?
yeah. We got a we got the we got a gas stove and then we also got the gas furnace. Well, I guess it's LP,
Gotcha.
liquid propane.
So so then your main heat source is a wood stove, but then you have the natural gas as a backup or to help supplement if it gets really cold, right?
Yeah,
Or
like
is it? Or
it's
you never
like
use it?
no, we use it like when we leave for the weekends, like if we go visit the kids or something like that, and we leave the house, we'll leave
Hmm.
that on so that the pipes don't freeze. But then,
Yes.
and unless it gets really cold, we're talking like -10 below or colder, then sometimes we'll have to supplement with the furnace. But otherwise, usually the wood stove's enough.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's if you can afford it, it's good to have a backup.
Most
It's good
definitely.
to have a backup.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's those folks too that have a big wood boiler outside. I mean, the to have one of the things are awesome, but they're very expensive. But they have to run. They have to be fed wood all the time, so you can't go away for the weekend. You need to have someone there to keep feeding because then your pipes may freeze, type thing. So it's one of those things where it all depends on where you're living, where you're set up, and how cold it gets, and if you can have one more source to keep your home warm enough to keep the pipes from freezing. That's important. You don't want your pipes to freeze.
No,
That'd be
no.
bad. That'd be bad.
Happened to me twice. I don't want it to happen
Yeah.
again.
Hmm. I definitely have replaced a few frozen spigots and pipes in homes before. That's uh, not fun.
No,
Not fun. Yeah.
especially when it's freezing outside.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah,
It
because I
doesn't
had
get that cold here, but definitely, yeah. Go ahead.
because we got wells. I got a well, and so
Okay.
right, that's how we get our water. So um, if the pipes freeze, usually the well pump will then freeze. So then I'm outside unfreezing the well pump. Not fun. Not fun.
Jeez. Yeah, I've been outside with a torch and a heat gun and with insulation and the pipes. Like you have the older homes here sometimes and old plumbing and yeah, not fun, not fun. How is the weather right now over there? Is it getting into fall time? Are you still hot from the summer?
It was in the 70s last, or it was in the 90s last week. But the now it's in the 70s. So we're still pretty warm. We're still pretty warm.
Do you have rain on the horizon anytime soon yet?
It rained a lot this summer, which actually caused some problems because we had the oak. I had bucked it and we had split it and we had stacked it where we had split it and we had to go and get it and then bring it to the containers and it rained literally for almost a week straight and where that wood was I couldn't get to it because the area had flooded. So we got a lot of rain this year, but not so much this fall yet. It rained a little bit this morning, but that was it. So
Hmm.
yeah, we actually need a break from the rain so that all that stuff dries up.
Do you think that fall will be sooner than later, or is it going to be like maybe like next month's going to start for you?
Um, we usually don't start until October.
Okay.
So like next month, November is usually sometimes we'll have to spark it up, but it all depends. You know, we all I know is I got enough wood, so I don't really care.
You don't care. And because you have enough wood, you're going to be very liberal in burning. You're not going to be conservative like, oh, I had one piece here and one piece there. You're going to fill that sucker up each time to make sure that it's going to just roast your house. That's good. That's good. Yeah, I don't want to be where like I'm having to not penny pinch, but I want to keep my house warm because all the hard work is now I'm gonna use the wood. And if I had to buy the wood, I feel that I would be more inclined to be stingy of how I burn and when I burn. Whereas when usually I get my house pretty warm, and it's a constant to make sure that the house is toasty inside, and
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. See, like when we keep the house usually around about 75 to 78 degrees in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm.
When my kids come over, all bets are off. They shove that stove full of wood. At one time, it got over 90 degrees in the house. I had to open doors and windows, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" They're like, "We're warm and toasty." I'm like, "No, stop it! Just stop it."
Well, it sounds like you need to get your kids more involved in your firewood because they want to burn more of it, so they need to be
I
involved
know.
to having to process it, right? Yeah, get those
Absolutely.
kids involved.
Yeah. Well, my kids
You
are
want
all
to burn, you got to work for it.
Yeah, my kids
Say
are all
again, I'm
grown.
sorry? Oh, okay,
Yes.
I gotcha.
Yeah. They got their own jobs and their own lives, but when they come visit, it's just like, oh, let's crank up the heat.
Crank up the heat, Dad.
That's it.
No, yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, I grew up with wood heat. We never processed it. We never processed wood, but it was buying cords and then it was dumped in our driveway, and then it was because it was in our driveway, we had to get it stacked right away so we could drive. So I remember doing that when I was younger, but I never got experienced directly with having to buck or to fell or to split. Really, I was only later in life. But there are definitely stories of on the channel with the podcast of people growing up with wood and having to go out there when they were younger, having to split by hand and old chainsaws and all that.
Yeah, I don't know how the earlier pioneers did it with just a hatchet. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they kept up with the wood that they were able to stay warm through the entire winter. I don't know how they did it. I really don't. Because I don't know if you've ever cut down a tree and then basically bucked it with an axe, but that takes a tremendous amount of effort, man.
Well, I mean, like if you're outside and it's cold and you're with axe or hatchet, then you're warm then. But if you stop, you're gonna be cold as balls. So yeah, there's definitely. I mean, if you're gunning firewood yourself, there's definitely work involved in it. But it's a good work type thing, and to heat your home and sit back in your chair and say, this house is warm because of me and my hard work. It's a good feeling for sure. But
That's where that thing comes from. Wood heats twice.
Exactly. Yep. He's twice.
Heats
I
twice.
agree. Yeah. But how the old timers did it with logging and the firewood. Like if there's a round that's knotty, I'm not going to even attempt to split it up by hand. It's going to go on the splitter. If I'm going to split with an axe, it's going to be a straight grain piece where I can just go through it like butter, and then I'm done. I'm not going to fight with knots. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Good times, John. I appreciate this conversation and what you brought to the podcast. I think you had a good story. I appreciate you and your time. I think we could definitely talk a lot longer, but I want to respect your time over there
Not a problem.
on Firewood. But in the future, if you can think of anything else you want to share with us, I could definitely have you on again, for sure.
Okay. I appreciate that. And I hope that I was able to give information to somebody that they can use and it makes them more efficient or saves them money.
Yeah, or just the tips of just being safe out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, go ahead and say goodbye to everyone, John.
All right. Again, thanks for having me, man, and stay safe.
Likewise. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in again. This podcast. So season 2 is now underway. If you want to be on the podcast, let me know. Shoot me an email. I'll get you on. Until next time, stay safe, stay cotton. Cheers.